You will not remember what I show you now, and yet I shall awaken memories of love and crime and death. Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the NECA Universal Monsters The Mummy figure. This is Imhotep as portrayed by Boris Karloff in the first Mummy film from 1932. And to say I was excited for this figure is an understatement. I really enjoyed the Frankenstein's monster we got previously from them in this line. And even when I was filming that review months ago, I was very excited for the next offerings. So excited that I had to break out a little science camp here for our opening scene. Needed a crusty old British guy for it, so I had a John Hammond figure that worked just fine. Right off the bat, the first thing I'm really pleased about is seeing that the sarcophagus that came with the Universal Select Mummy still works with this new figure. I say still works, he is a little bit thicker, I guess you would say, than the Universal Select release. So you can't get the lid on the sarcophagus with him in there. But it really doesn't matter because if the lid's on, you can't see he's in there anyway. But for a setup like this, it works just fine. So we're going to jump into this figure. We'll look at his accessories. We will look at all the different features and details on him, and of course we will do some heavy comparisons with the previous Universal Select releases. Well, 2 of the 3, because I can't find my Wave 1 non-sarcophagus figure, but it's not that big a deal. We'll kind of work around that anyway. Yep, I'll shut up and we'll jump right into it. We get 3 or 4 main accessories with this figure, depending on how you want to count it. First up, we have these little bandage accessories. They are slightly different sculpts between the 2 of them, but they are basically designed to be these soft rubbery pieces you could add to the mummy as needed. In the opening shot here, I had one draped over his shoulder, one around his neck to kind of just give him some extra bandaging, but I've seen from some of the promotional material stuff like wrapping it around his leg to look like he's dragging the bandages, like when you see him, or you barely see him, leaving the room at the beginning of the movie. Could also kind of drape it over parts. You could hide joints with it a little bit. Just do different flavoring pieces to it so that it gives it, some character, like the bandages are coming unraveled. They're nothing crazy. They don't stay on particularly well, no matter where you try to put them. And it does take a little work to get, what you want out of them, I think. But I like that they exist. I think they're really nice for doing different photos with the mummy. And they don't look too dissimilar from the actual figure itself. So if you set them up right, it'll look like it really belongs there and isn't just an extra piece draped over it. The other piece we get is the casket that the Scroll of Thoth is found in. So this is kind of the little ornate box. You can see it has the star pattern on the side. It's kind of metallic. Is that Isis there on the side? I don't remember my Egyptian gods very well, but you can see him in gold. It's really nice shiny gold as well. It's got little feet on the bottom of it, but nothing else much on the bottom. And then we've got the hieroglyphics there. Is that the right word? I don't even know if that's really the right term, but yeah, the Egyptian writing there on the top of the box, also in a very nice reflective gold. The lid on this box will open. You can see there's also like a gold rim around the top. And I have already removed the accessory because, well, we got some extra things to talk about there. Upon initially opening the casket, this is how the Scroll of Thoth more or less was stuck inside, more folded than anything else. From the movie, we know that this should be rolled up. Even the images that NECA's used for the promotional materials show it rolled. It seems like when they were packaging this figure, I don't know if it's mine specifically or any others, but they just got lazy and kind of folded it up. So I'm shooting this actually before I film anything else. You can see kind of how much of a mess it is. I'm going to try rolling it up and see if I can get it to take some shape while I'm shooting the rest of the review. But this is really cool on the inside. You have all the hieroglyphs, all the various gods and characters in there. So they did a great job detailing this out. I mean, the back kind of has that cool papyrus look. It just shouldn't be folded like that. So yeah, I'm going to give this a test, see if I can correct this. All right, so I've had the scroll tied up around the Sharpie for half an hour. I don't know if that's long enough to mold it into a better shape, but we shall see. Yeah, that may have done at least something for us here. Looks like it definitely didn't get the creases out. So it may need a little more time. Or maybe to be flattened first and then do all that. Thankfully, the painter's tape was gentle enough on it. We didn't lose anything. So yeah, definitely not perfect still. It probably needs some more time, but at least we got a little better shape to it going on here. So we can, I guess, roll that up for now and toss it back in the box. Actually, before we throw it in the box, let's make some quick comparisons. So Universal Select gave us a version of this coffin. Theirs is much less ornate and much smaller. You can see here it's just kind of a brassy, goldish color. I kind of like the antique look to it, but this box in the movie did come out of another box at the beginning, so it kind of makes sense that it would be in good condition. This, I believe, was like attached to the first base that the figure came with, if I remember correctly. So the paint on the bottom of mine is damaged because I kind of ripped it off that base, but I prefer to have it as an accessory I can move around. This one, I don't believe opens. Oh, never mind, it does open. So that is an option with this one too. It just isn't as visually appealing as this new one is. There's also not any writing on the top. And then Diamond gave us two versions of their own of the Scroll of Thoth. The first one, once again, was plugged into the display base and I ripped it out. Didn't really have anything on it. It was just kind of like a scroll and you couldn't make out what was on it at all. Second one they gave us had some detail on it. It also kind of came on a scroll. I don't know what you call the spindle part of a scroll. You can see there are some hieroglyphics carved in it and everything, so it has some detail going on. I don't think it was ever on that spindle in the movie. I believe in the movie it was just kind of a rolled up piece of paper or parchment inside the box. So what NECA gave us is the more accurate one, of course, but I really do like, having all these figures now. I have these pieces to kind of put together and mix and match to have, other set dressing if I want to set up a little display with the mummy figure. So while NECA definitely has the accuracy for both their box, their coffin, casket, whatever you want to call it, and the scroll, the diamond pieces still kind of serve a cool little bit of set dressing. So we do get 3 different right hands for Imhotep. We only get the one left hand, so I'll get into that when we look at the rest of the figure. But basically we have the flat hand for when he's in the sarcophagus. We have 2 different kind of grasping or outreaching hands. One where the fingers are kind of in a line, and then one where the index finger is kind of raised up a little bit more. Flip those around and see a little more detail on them. They'll kind of have the nice same wrinkly flesh texture on there, some nice dry brushing. I love the fingernails, or the end of the fingers really. The end of the fingers, both on the top and bottom, have that nice black look to them. Like they have like necrosis going on there. They all also have the scarab ring, which looks really nice. There's a little bit of green, mostly gold though. You can see it carrying over to the bottom of the hand as well. Obviously with such a tiny detail, the accuracy of it varies from hand to hand, but overall I think they did a pretty good job of doing it on all of them. Imhotep also comes with 3 separate head sculpts. The interesting thing is that while 2 of them are appropriate for the movie, things that we would see in the film, which being the 2 on the left, the third one seems to be just entirely an original idea. I don't know, maybe there's some behind the scenes images of Karloff doing an expression like this in the mummy makeup, but let's face it, this version of the character has extremely little screen time in the actual film, so you didn't even really have a chance to make much in the way of facial expressions. And a lot of the shot is him, as you see on the left, with the closed eyes and the kind of the plain expression. Obviously, we do get that middle one where his eyes open up, which is very subtle on a figure with this kind of paint grading, but I do like how they look. I think the one with the open mouth is cool. Like, if you're trying to set up a different scene, it's nice to have a face that has some more expression that you can kind of play around with. But I'm almost wondering if maybe there's something in the contract with Universal that all these figures have to come with 3 different head sculpts, because so far that's been consistent between the 3 figures that have been released. And I don't know, I just don't expect to get a bonus head that isn't actually even in the film. All 3 heads are really nicely detailed. Similar to the hands, they have that dry brushing to get all the wrinkles to stand out. The hair is very subtle in that it's kind of plastered down to the head, but the paint gradation between the kind of warmer grays of the flesh going into the lighter grays of the hair, I think they work pretty well. Not a whole lot going on in the back of the heads. They all look pretty much the same. I do like that the skin's kind of pulling away from the nose and all that kind of detail as well. The wrinkles look like they pull in a really cool looking direction. It works. I think it's a great representation of that Jack Pierce makeup. Looking at the full figure itself, I like that the neck, which is its own kind of separate middle piece here, but shared between the 3 heads, does have a bit of the flesh tone up at the very top of it, and then it goes into the bandages. Maybe a part for articulation more so than this, but I will say that when you bend his neck, this lower joint at extreme angles, it kind of has a mushroom shape that looks a bit odd, so you do kind of have to spend some time getting that to lay a little more flush to the rest of the body. mummy, but I think overall it works pretty well. Coming down to the body, I mean, we're going to see a lot of the same colors and everything on this mummy. You know, we have the bandages going across the chest. They have a good wash to them. There's not a lot of dry brushing on the main wrappings. It really is more of a dark brown wash with the grayish bandages, but we see them crisscrossing his chest there. Same going on here in the back. My one gripe, of course, here on the front is that when they made this curve here in his upper chest, you do see a bit of a gap in there, and I don't know if you really lose a lot of articulation if that was going more straight across or something, but it does kind of appear a little bit unsightly here. Upper arms have more of that same wrapping. Actually, all the arms do, up until you get to the wrist where you have a little bit of flesh exposed, and then you have the hands. I mentioned before, he only has the one left hand, and it is kind of more the flat hand for, you know, the sarcophagus look and everything, but has the same detail that you get on the other one minus the ring. I will say another bit that is a little awkward with the sculpt is that kind of squared off shape of the wrist exposed there, because when you turn the hand, I don't know, sideways, it looks a little goofy. It's really meant to hold the hand in that one particular direction well, and it is a bit jarring when his hand is turned 90 degrees, but it's not the worst thing ever, just a little nitpick there. I feel like I don't have a whole lot to say going down here. He's got more bandages, more bandages, more bandages. We do have a kind of rubberized section here at the bottom for his ass. More wrappings and wrappings and wrappings. I will say another awkward area with his articulation is the knees here. Just this upper shin part kind of sticks down at a bit of a point, and it can kind of create just an odd look at times with how pointy it is. It seems like it should have ended just a little bit higher than it does maybe. And then we have his bandaged feet, and we do have the wrappings continuing onto the bottom with peg holes at the bottom of his feet. For articulation, I have to say this figure is a huge improvement over the Universal Select release. As I kind of mentioned before, he has a ball joint at the base of his head and then a separate one at the base of his neck, so you get a great range of motion. That mushroom shape of the joint is a bit annoying, but you can avoid it if you play it right and just get a great range of motion out of his head. His arms will rotate a full 360 degrees. They will go out to the side. Basically a full 90-degree range of motion here, it seems, or pretty close to it, which is great. We have a bicep swivel up here. We have a double-jointed elbow, which doesn't bend in quite as tight as I'd like for a double-jointed elbow, but it works well enough, and all this comes together to let you actually cross his hands over his chest, which is great. You can also rotate there at the elbow. The hand will swivel and then hinge up and down. Every hand has the same hinge direction. We have a ball joint here at the upper torso that I mentioned before with that weird gap. So you could swivel side to side, you could rock side to side a little bit and lean forward and back. Similar ball joint here at the lower torso, a little bit forward and back, a little bit side to side, and a lot of rotation there as well. We have that soft rubber diaper thing going on here, although it doesn't feel quite as soft as it does on some NECA figures, but the legs will kick pretty far forward, not very far back. It is really limited there. We have an upper thigh swivel. We have a single jointed knee, and we have a hinge at the foot that will also pivot. So really nice range of motion there, and besides a couple gripes with gaps, I think it works out pretty darn well for this figure. Bringing in our Universal Select figures for comparison, on the left we have what I believe is the Wave 1 Mummy. I believe this was the Previews exclusive one that came with this, well, I know it's one that came with the sarcophagus, but I believe that was Previews exclusive if I remember right. And then on the right there we have the Wave 6, I think, Mummy figure. You can see both these guys are a fair bit taller than our NECA figure, but I honestly always kind of thought the Universal Select figures were a bit on the tall side anyway. The one on the left, maybe not as bad, but the one on the right, that whole new wave they introduced with the more articulation, they just were kind of monstrously tall, no pun intended. So I'm not super disappointed that this NECA figure is smaller. There's more detail, more articulation, more pretty much everything I'd want out of the figure in a smaller package. And like I said, the fact that he fits into that sarcophagus from the Universal Select Wave 1, that just makes me happy, even though NECA is making their own, and I'll probably end up picking that one up. And then for a more NECA-based size comparison, we have their Universal Select Frankenstein's Monster there on the left, and the closest thing I can find to a normal human, the Demon from American Werewolf in London on the right. Not exactly a great thing for a standard human, but whatever. It's right body size, more or less. So it is interesting seeing Karloff standing next to himself here, and those platform shoes definitely make a difference, but they do look really cool together. Two totally iconic monsters side by side. And then, yeah, you could see he's not much bigger than a standard kind of human-sized figure, so that works out. He really wasn't supposed to be anything crazy in terms of his physicality, just an old dead guy wrapped up in bandages. That happens to be magic. I really like how this figure came out. I have some minor gripes with it, but overall I think they made a really solid figure. I've already said my whole thing about how much I love that Universal Monsters is finally getting some love again, how after so long without really good figures, we're getting some top quality ones, I think. And I can't wait to see more. So this thing gets a high recommend, but of course I can't leave it without giving my little wish list. I'm filming this right at the end of Fake Toy Fair for 2022, you know, when they just post everything online, which is really no different for most of us, but there is no physical event people are going to. So I don't think they're gonna suddenly reveal any new Universal Monsters stuff between me filming this and me getting this edited and uploaded and all that. But, you know, there is a chance that they will, and I'll say something that's already been revealed here. But obviously, since the scene with the mummy in bandages is such a tiny part of the film, I would really like to see them do an Ardith Bay figure. Trick or Treat Studios bothered to put out an Ardith Bay mask along with their mummy mask, so maybe that is a trend in the right direction and we can actually get him in figure form. Maybe not the best action figure because it's a man in a robe, so, you know, you're going to limit some articulation just by default, but come on, I think it would be cool to have. I also would like to see, is it Karis, the Lon Chaney Jr. version of the mummy. Once again, a little hindered in terms of action figure because his arm is permanently bandaged to his chest, but he had multiple movies where Imhotep only had the one, at least in the Boris Karloff incarnation. So, yeah, I would like to see those for sure. Obviously, there's plenty more Universal Monsters I have on my wish list, but I'm going to keep it mummy-centric here for the time being. Though, you know what? Looking at this Nathan Drake figure that may or may not be a bootleg, I am thinking, is it time we get some Brendan Fraser mummy figures? Like, I don't know, Brendan Fraser's kind of having his little renaissance right now. I wouldn't say no to some original, 1999, was it, mummy figures? It might be the right time. So when I picked this figure up, I also did pick up the new Wolfman, so his review will be coming relatively soon as well. Until next time, see you guys later. Bye.